Your Miami Heat, they wrapped up the regular season yesterday with a win over the Detroit Pistons, 120-107. A game yesterday that really had nothing for the Heat to play for. They were pretty much locked into that 6th seed, other than if you thought that the New York Knicks were going to lose to the Boston Celtics, who are completely gutless. So that wasn't going to happen. So your Miami Heat are locked in there. But the Knicks actually ended up clinching the 4 seed. They finished with the same record as the Atlanta Hawks. They have the tiebreaker over them, so that is your 4-5. And there was, I guess, maybe there was an outside shot that Brooklyn could have dropped to the 3 seed. That didn't end up happening yesterday. I went in there yesterday pretty much thinking, Robbie, we were going to be playing the Milwaukee Bucks. I didn't really think that a lot of shuffling was going to occur. It was funny, actually, just typing out headlines. I didn't even think Brooklyn, there was a shot. They were talking about that on the broadcast. Like, oh yeah, maybe Brooklyn will drop to the 3 seed. I'm like, that ain't happening. That's it. That ain't happening. I thought it was going to be the rematch all the way through, which it ended up being. Funny enough that the Heat actually played Milwaukee on Saturday night, which, you didn't have Jimmy Butler. So that's it was one of those games where he ended up having a back injury. And so what was going to be, were they going to be able to step up with Adam? And they kind of got blitzed right out of the gate. Like, it was one of those games where Kendrick Nunn balled out. He had a great game. I would say Bam probably had one of his most lackluster games of the season. But they were kind of, teasing it throughout. Maybe if they got one stop here or one extra basket there, they could have been actually in that game. It just never came. And so this is where Miami's at. They finished 40-32. They finished a game back of the 4-5. It had a very similar feeling to last year, honestly, where it's like, yeah, all right, well, we had this big win over the Philadelphia 76ers. Once they clinched into the playoffs, it kind of felt like they didn't really care where the chips fell. Nobody played yesterday. I mean, the only person who played was Duncan, who ended up playing all the games this year, and Tyler, as far as like the regs were concerned. Everybody else had a rest day. They had a huge injury. Like Kendrick Nunn was out. Bam was out. Andre Iguodala. Jimmy obviously
a bullpen game.
Yeah.
Bullpen game.
So
except they lost.
So yeah, I mean, there were, I saw. Yep. Duncan. You don't sit Duncan. Duncan's like, I'm all in.
I think he's. I think they asked him.
No, I think
says no. I want to play in all the games.
I think he wants to play in all the games.
Yeah, he wanted to play 72.
Yeah, I think he wanted to play in all the games. That's one of those end of the year big deal things for him. Like, there were some cool things yesterday that happened in the NBA. Like Steph Curry ended up winning the scoring title. He was killing it.
LeBron is in the play-in tournament.
I know. It's so good. I love it. It's gonna be him versus Steph on Wednesday.
Oh
wow!
So that's good.
One game scenario.
He's got to be so mad because he's saying like, "Oh, the guy who invented that should be fired." But man, that's good. I mean, if you're talking about,
he pulled the Tobin because last year he said it was awesome.
Right? Yeah. Well,
I think
you don't have to say it. You don't have to say it's a pulling of me. I mean,
yeah, it is.
If anything, it's pulling of LeBron. He does it all the time.
I agree, bro. Anyway, so the Heat end up in the 3 spot. And look, I'm good with this, man. I like, yes, the Knicks would have been a fun first round series if that could have come to fruition. Hawks, we talked about it. Like, there's a little sneaky Heat Trae Young beef, but I mean, you want to talk about, an intense matchup from the get go. This is by far, I think, the best East first round matchup. I mean, you're talking about a rematch from last year. Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Bucks getting their asses kicked by the Heat. Everybody wants to say, oh, the Heat were bubble frauds. But
the Heat match up well against Milwaukee.
Giannis has the Supermax thing that had the Heat were pursuing Giannis. He ends up staying with the Bucks, and the Heat now can have the opportunity to bounce his team for the first round. That's good. And the other thing is, the funny thing is, I've been seeing this storyline a lot where it's like, oh well, if the Heat don't get out of the first round, doesn't it prove that last year was a fraud? They were bubble frauds. No. Which I want to respond to that with, if you think that the pressure is on the Miami Heat in this series, you are high off your horse, dude, because all of the pressure, and I mean all of the pressure in this series lies strictly with the 2-time MVP and the Milwaukee Bucks, who spent 3 first-round picks on Drew Holiday. And the other thing is, see, this is the thing with Heat fans that is funny. It's like the memory is quite short. You know, for all the stuff that we did about Giannis stopper going into last year and the Heat have the keys to stopping Giannis Antetokounmpo, do not forget what that team did to the Miami Heat in the bubble before they got to the playoffs last year, Leroy. The Bucks came out, they whooped the Miami Heat in the bubble games right before the playoffs started.
The same way they did on Saturday.
Same way, almost the exact same game, Robbie. And the other thing is, Jimmy Butler has not played in a Bucks game this entire season. Ergo, not a true series. Yep.
Oh,
he has missed all 3 Bucks games. They have not played the Miami Heat. All right. They have played a version of the Miami Heat, but they have not played a true version of the Miami Heat.
Now, I will say this, contrary to what you're saying. Okay, because I don't believe in all that
come on.
Cookies and whatever. But I will say this, and I will repeat this because I said it last week. Unlike a lot of teams in the NBA, the Heat always seem to play their best basketball last month of the season. So that when it gets to this point, I'm not going to question them. I may not think that they're going to win a series, but it won't be because I don't think they're not playing their best basketball. So I'm not all this stuff about, look at what I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about that because I know for a fact the Heat basketball that I've seen for the last 3 weeks could compete with anybody in this league. So we'll see what happens.
Official predictions will come later this week. Official predictions.
Well, really?
You know,
you could have gave your prediction last week.
No, you don't know what I'm going to say.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
Okay.
You don't know what I'm going to say.
Okay.
Different stakes, you know.
Okay.
You don't know.
Okay, they got to play 4 series to win the title, right? They're going to finish off 16-4.
You don't know that.
Yeah. Okay.
You don't.
Okay.
One series last year I picked in 4.
That was right. That was an accurate prediction against the Pacers.
Nailed it. I nailed the first 2 series. Nailed it.
Okay.
The only reason I didn't nail the next series is because they got cute. Got too cute.
Right.
But listen, Giannis, bring it on. This is what you wanted, baby. You had your choice. You said, I don't want to leave. This is the team I can win with. You better hope so. Because let me tell you something. You're stuck like Chuck if you lose this series. It's all on you. It's all
you think?
On you. This is what you wanted.
They've been giving Giannis a break. Like
this
certain
is
players,
all on you.
Certain players,
they better not
say about the people around them.
Isn't
that one of the things they say with Giannis?
They better not. They better not. If I hear LeBron and Kevin Durant and James Harden get all this grief, let me tell you something. Once this dude gets bounced from the first round in about a week and a half, I better be hearing a lot of smoke around Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Who do you think has the most pressure between?
I think it's him. I don't think
Brooklyn,
it's even close.
Philadelphia, and Milwaukee.
I think Milwaukee has to.
Yeah, because they've kind of been in the weeds all year.
Here's why. I say Philadelphia. They don't have the pressure because they just revamped with Daryl Morey and Doc Rivers, and the big move is going to be if they embarrass themselves, it's going to be got to break up Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, and I would say that means you're going to break up Ben Simmons, and they probably can get something good to revamp everything together.
So you're basically saying they got to get out of jail free card. Whether it's
I think they got an easy way.
And Morey, they have a get out of jail free card because they can say, this first year we were trying to figure out which way we were going to go with it.
Brooklyn, the only guy who really has a lot of pressure on him is James Harden because the other guys have rings.
And for the most part, this team has not been carried by Kyrie and KD. It's been carried by James Harden this year.
And then I would say for the first 2/3 of it, and then the last 30 was out. So, so you have that. I just think it has to be the team that has you always got to look to the teams of who has the least flexibility after this and who's had the most time together. And I just think it's Milwaukee.
And they made the biggest move. I mean,
Yeah,
Brooklyn made some big moves, but there's a difference in making big moves when you weren't anywhere.
Right.
And making big moves when you've been the top team in the East for the last 2 years.
Right. There's going to be moves where they can figure out what you could do around KD and Kyrie and James Harden for the next couple of years. I don't know if Giannis Antetokounmpo and Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton don't work out, they're kind of locked into all those guys. It's kind of over.
They just paid Middleton. They just paid Giannis. They just traded a fortune for Drew Holiday. Yeah.
And then the only team, like, I think you look at these matchups, like Milwaukee's the only one of those top 3 teams that has to take on a team with a winning record, that has to take on a team that, like, okay, you mean say what you want, you're a revamp team, and they kicked your ass last year in the playoffs. Like, they definitely got the toughest draw out of anybody. And the fact that, and no one's going to remember that, because if you lose in the first round, you lose in the first round.
Right.
So, yeah, it's going to be dicey if I should say it's going to be dicey, because it's going to be dicey. Like Guy Fieri at the cutting board. Suppose about to take you to Flavortown, Budenholzer.
Little Salt Bay.
Little.
Slap the meat.
Season ended yesterday with a win over the Detroit Pistons. There wasn't really much on the line for Miami that was in their hands. They unfortunately had lost to the Bucks the day before. Jimmy Butler was a late scratch. We found out that he wasn't going to go against Milwaukee, and that kind of sealed their fate if they were going to be the 6th seed, because you didn't feel great about the Knicks losing to the Celtics. I mean, the Celtics are as gutless as it gets. So that wasn't going to happen.
They're in the play-in, right?
The Knicks or the Celtics? Yeah, Celtics are. Yeah, no, the Knicks are the 4 seed. They clinched the 4 seed, finished with the same record as the Hawks. The Heat finished a game behind both of them. So the Heat are the 6th seed.
Think about that.
Yep.
You're 1 game away from either hosting Atlanta or the Knicks. I would have loved to see that.
I would have loved to see it too. That would have been a lot of fun.
The Knicks. Now you can't play the Knicks.
No, probably not. That'd be pretty wild if that ended up happening. But I still like this series. I think this is going to be fun because there's a lot of juice to it from the standpoint of we know that Giannis very embarrassed last year with that team getting bounced in 5 games. Right. We know that they have. This is a huge pressure year for Milwaukee, and then if the Heat come out and they beat Milwaukee, I mean, it's kind of game on in the East. Like, everybody who wants to talk about them being bubble frauds and all that type of stuff, like, you put that to bed. You beat, because you're by far going to have the toughest matchup out of anybody in the opening round. Like, it's definitely the most intriguing, I think, from the rematch standpoint. I know the Knicks will get a lot of attention. I'm sure they'll get a lot of primetime games just because the Mecca, bro. But, like, I mean, honestly, like, all right, Knicks versus Hawks. Jeez, I can't wait.
I would say this.
Thibodeau's going to hustle you to death.
One of the things that is unfortunate is that Milwaukee brought in Drew Holiday, and we had the guy who I would have liked to see match up against him in Oladipo.
Yep.
Because those two guys are very similar. So had the Heat Victor had been healthy enough, I would have more confidence, even though I'm not discrediting the Heat whatsoever, simply because, look, I'm done saying they can't do it after what I've seen and how this team has played at the end of the last 4 or 5 years.
Sure.
That being said, that is the caveat or the difference between last year and this year, is that they have a point guard that can also put a lot of pressure on your defense. So when you think of,
he's a good player.
You got that point guard who does a lot of the things that Oladipo does. Then you got Giannis, who also does that. And then you have Middleton, who's more of a perimeter guy than anything. Then you got a big, which, look, Dedmon can.
But I will say this: they have a lot of ground to make up from that series. Like that series was not close last year.
Yeah, but
It wasn't close. So like
why are you
get,
worried about?
because
In
fairness,
in fairness to sports, okay. One of the things why you make additions, you change what you do, you you do some corrective work on your roster and your team and the way you do things is because what happened last year. The Bucks are different than they were last year. This is a different team. Stop trying to say because of what they did last year.
Well, I don't agree with you though, Leroy. Because
if it doesn't work and the improvements that they think they made doesn't work, it still won't have anything to do with what happened last year.
I would disagree from this standpoint, though,
Why?
because I would say that the biggest thing that has to change from last season, if the Bucks are going to win, is Giannis has to play a lot better, and he wasn't good enough for them last year. Like,
but he doesn't.
We could talk about Eric, their improvement of having Drew Holiday over Eric Bledsoe. I'll hear you out on that, but I think ultimately, like, their best guy has to play a lot better for them, and he was not good enough for them last year, and the Heat seemingly better than any other team knows how to handle Giannis Antetokounmpo.
But understand this: what gives them the chance of doing that is the addition of Drew Holiday. It takes some of the pressure. It takes some of the pressure off of Giannis.
I don't think it does.
It does as far as scoring. It does as far as he doesn't have. Look, he needs to be great in order for them to win. I'm not disputing that, but he can be average and they still have a chance to win before they didn't.
I don't know about that. I don't think that they can.
I don't think you understand how good Drew Holiday is.
I don't think you understand how much the Heat have owned this guy and how
again, if I take and add another guy that does some of the things that Giannis does, it thins out that they can't guard two of those guys.
Okay, Leroy, but I would say to that effect, though, like you could give me the best Drew Holiday series of your life, and you still need Giannis Antetokounmpo to be competent. He wasn't even a competent player last year against the Heat.
But when you take some of the pressure off of him, it allows him to be that.
Yeah, but you don't think that the Heat are going to go in like the Heat for the most part when they take on teams this year, their number one objective is to take out the number one playmaking guy. Like they send a lot. They'll do that with high scoring guards, all that type of stuff. They usually will let somebody else beat them. Like if you're going to go into a Heat series, you're going to say, "Hey, Drew Holiday, go beat us." Like you're going to take that more so than freeing up Giannis a little bit more. And you may like his chances better than Eric Bledsoe. I get that, or George Hill, or any of these guys that they've had in the past. I'm not saying that he doesn't improve them from some standpoint, but ultimately their best guy has to be the best guy. And I will say one of the things that always is going to be a difference between our best guy and their best guy is our best guy is going to try and go stop them. Their best guy is never going to try it. He's never going to try it.
But and here's the other thing. You think that he can win if Jimmy's not great?
Like not.
That's the way the playoffs work. That's the way the playoffs work. And what happens is that there's been games where Jimmy has been average and the Heat have had other guys to pick up the slack. And the more guys you have like that, even though to win, you need your great players to be great, it does help. But when you aren't playing your best, that you have other players can pick up the slack.
I understand.
I'm not saying that he can't win.
But this is the big difference that I think has to be said. And you can say I can't look into last year or career or whatever. I think this stuff matters, is that Jimmy Butler, when the playoffs get going, he still rises as a player because he can have the ball in his hands late. He can manipulate how he can get to the line and things like that. He's going to guard the other team's best player. And we've seen the last couple of years where Giannis has been the elite player in this league. When he's gotten to the postseason, he hasn't been as good.
Right.
And so I just think that stuff doesn't change with going into this series.
All right. Like I just don't like. I'm never gonna not say a player can be better. I'm not gonna ever say that like a player is gonna be the same player for his whole career.
Yeah, he better be better.
But what I will say is this: is that this Milwaukee team is different than it was last year. And to just go into a series and assume that the Heat are going to do the same things they did to Milwaukee because of last year, it's just not, you're taking a blind leap of faith because this team is different. I'm not saying it can't happen. And that's where I think, you think the comments that I'm making is saying that the Heat can't do it. No, I'm not saying. But the reasons why they do it will be different because that team is different.
Yeah, but I would just say that it would be the same. It would be the same thing. I would give that kind of problems to like Philly. Like Philly is going to go into a series where they have two guys that haven't had a ton of playoff success, especially without Jimmy Butler. I wouldn't give that same argument for Brooklyn because at least they have Kevin Durant.
Right. All young players eventually go through this. And then at some point they turn the corner. And at some point they get over that hump. And I think when you have a player that is a two-time MVP, I'm not going to just say he's going to be that same player for his whole career. And so although I'm not discrediting what the Heat do, and I'm not saying they can't shut him down again and beat him in 5 again. I'm not saying
You're
that.
saying Heat in 5?
No, I'm not saying
that. 5?
But what I am saying
sounds like you're tiptoeing there.
But what I am saying is this: is that 1 year does not just go on to the next year. They're not going to be that same team you faced last year. Stop assuming that. You just tend to think, oh, Milwaukee, we did it last year. We could do it this year. It doesn't work like that.
I just think but no team has more pressure going into this playoffs than them. I really don't. I believe that. Like if you're going into a series, you're like, damn, we're taking on the team that bounced us in 5 last year. Imagine if the Bucks get bounced in the first round. Like you thought it was bad. You thought it was bad last year.
Yeah, that would definitely be disheartening. I would say more than this.
By the way, don't think I forgot about him with his little bubble comments from his Greece interview, where he's like, "Oh, well, we didn't get to have our home court advantage." Well, now you do, buddy. Enjoy your 50% capacity, where half of them are going to be rooting for Tyler Hero anyway. You're gonna have all these little Milwaukeeans over there wearing baby goat jerseys.
The same group of people that booed him when he went to was it Duke or
flip-floppers?
Yeah.
Oh no, they because he left Wisconsin and went to a real basketball program.
Right, correct. Look, it'll be interesting to see because guess what? In the last month, one of the best Heat players has been Kendrick Nunn.
Mm-hmm.
How is he gonna fit in there?
I think he's starting, dude. Like I don't think he's losing his gig.
So, and I will say this: if the Bucks come into this series thinking they have to beat the version of the Heat they played last year, then they're gonna lose. It doesn't
and I honestly think
get an idea for how certain players play, but this Heat team is different than they were last year.
They are, but I also think that they've filled that, that everybody was crazy early in the season about losing out on Jay Crowder. I think Trevor Ariza has done as good a job as Jay has done did last year. And I think it can bring a lot. Maybe you want to question he's not as big, but I mean, you're talking about
I would say he's more he picks his spots a little bit better than Jay Crowder.
He's also
trying to get the ball hot. He's shooting it.
He's also, but even just defensively, he's just much more of a terror and causing deflections and all that type of stuff. Like he's a disruptor in that regard.
I think Trevor could guard more positions because of his length.
I'm excited.
And I think Crowder was more of a perimeter guy.
Look, it reminds me a lot of a couple of years ago where we ended up with the Philly series, and it was going to be like if you won that series, like it was going to be game on. So it's a lot of pressure because it's either going to be this series where if the Heat lose, you lose in the first round, and no one's really going to reflect of, oh, well, you had maybe the toughest matchup out of anybody in the first round. Like losing in the first round is losing in the first round.
You're already coming up with excuses?
I always think about narratives. I always think about these types of things. I always do.
It sounds like,
but
Sounds like you already got not a true loss ready to go.
No, I think if anything, I'm telling you that I think if anything, I'm telling you that you lose in the first round, it's going to hurt. Like, especially if like the Knicks end up winning a playoff series and you end up losing in the first round, that's going to suck. However, if you end up bouncing the Bucks in the first round, that's good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
No, of course. But I would just say that, we do it in all sports. I'm not just saying this with the Heat. We tend to look at last year and determine how our team's going to fare this year. And I would say, don't do that. That team's different. This team's different. And you got to kind of take it as that and take it for what your team is now versus what that team is now.
We'll take a quick break, get you caught up with your headlines. You guys can text the show, 786-360-0790. Robbie is yelling at me via Twitch chat, even though he left the box. Like, I don't know why. Robbie
here's what I can't figure out.
Bro. I don't understand.
Now he's talking to us through the community of Twitch.
What if I didn't have my chat up, bro? It would have never known.
Oh, look, I left the box because I looked at the clock. We're about to go to break, and I'm trying to set everything up so you guys can hear everything during the commercial break. Trying to think ahead, and then I get punished.
By the way, how come we haven't seen J-Fig for about 2 seconds?
I don't know, man. She's been quiet on a Monday.
Yeah.
Maybe looking up Leroy's ketchup chips.
Disgusting.
What are you doing over there, J-Fig? What? Come on.
I'm working.
All right, we're back after this.